Ilara sat on the edge of the cold wooden bed, her hands trembling as she rested them on her swollen belly. The small room smelled faintly of herbs and candle smoke, but the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. Outside, the wind whistled through the cracks of her parents' old cottage, carrying the bitter chill of winter. She had always known the world could be harsh, but she never imagined it would turn so sharply against her, so suddenly. Her parents' words still rang in her ears. "You have brought shame upon this family," her mother had said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "A child too soon, you are no longer welcome here." Her father had said nothing, only staring at her with a cold, disappointed gaze that cut deeper than any insult. That silence had been worse than yelling. It had been the final seal on her exile. And now she was alone. Alone, but carrying life. A tiny heartbeat inside her, fragile yet persistent, reminding her that she could not give up. She had to survive, not just for herself, but for the child she had yet to meet. Ilara wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders and stared out the small window. The mountains in the distance were covered in frost, jagged and silent, like the world itself had turned away from her. She had nowhere to go, no family to turn to, no friends she could trust. Only the forest beyond the village seemed to whisper her name, beckoning her into its shadowed paths. The first night she slept alone in the forest, she realized the danger of being a young mother without protection. Wolves prowled at the edges of her temporary camp, their eyes glowing in the firelight. Yet no matter how close they came, none attacked. It was strange, almost unnatural, and Ilara felt a shiver of unease. Something about this forest seemed alive, watching her, waiting for her. Days turned into weeks. Ilara learned to move silently among the trees, to find berries and roots, to avoid the hidden crevices where the frostbite could reach her. She whispered lullabies to the child in her womb, imagining the tiny hands and the tiny face she would hold soon. She had begun calling the child Avon, though she had never seen him. Yet even in her isolation, she could feel that the world beyond her forest was stirring. Strange shadows would flicker at the edges of her vision. At night, she dreamed of a man standing on a cliff, tall and dark, with eyes that seemed to pierce through her very soul. He never spoke, only watched. When she woke, she would find a token, a small carved figurine or a smooth black stone, lying near her sleeping place. She had no idea who sent them or why, but each token filled her with both fear and curiosity. One morning, she woke to find the snow-covered forest unusually silent. No birds sang, no wind rustled the branches. She stepped outside her shelter and found footprints in the snow, large, deliberate, and human. They led toward the stream where she had been collecting water. "Ilara," a deep voice murmured, almost carried by the wind. Her heart leaped into her throat, and she spun around. The man from her dreams was there, standing tall and proud, his cloak dark against the white of the snow. His eyes were sharp, golden like a predator's, yet softened by something she could not name. You are real," she whispered, taking a cautious step back. "I am as real as the life you carry," he said, his voice steady, commanding. "And you carry more than you know." Ilara's heart pounded. "Who are you? Why are you here?" "I am Kaelin," he said simply. "And the child you bear is mine," her breath caught. Her mind spun with disbelief. You must be mistaken. I don't know you." You do not remember," Kaelin interrupted, his voice softer now, almost gentle, "because it was never my choice to know you yet. Fate has a way of keeping truths hidden until the time is right." Ilara stared at him, confusion and fear battling with something strange stirring in her chest. The air between them was charged, not with anger or hatred, but with an unspoken recognition, a pull she could not resist. You are the Alpha King," she whispered, the name tasting strange on her tongue. Tales of him were whispered in every village, in every hearth. A ruler both feared and revered, he was said to have the strength of 10 men and the cunning of a wolf. Yet here he was, standing before her, vulnerable in a way no one else had ever seen. Kaelin's gaze softened, but it did not lose its intensity. "I did not know," he said. "Had I known, none of this, none of your suffering would have happened." Ilara wanted to believe him, but years of betrayal and abandonment had taught her caution. "Then why now? Why appear now after everything?" "Because now," he said, stepping closer, "I can protect you and him." His eyes fell on her belly, a mixture of awe and something deeper, almost reverence. "Avon is more than a child. He carries a gift, a power that could change the fate of both our worlds." Ilara's stomach knotted. "Power?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's just a baby." "Not just a baby," Kaelin corrected. Avon carries the bloodline of the Alpha Kings. That blood is strong and dangerous. There are those who would see him destroyed for fear or envy or power. Fear and determination battled within Alara. Then what do I do? She asked. I cannot go back. My parents, they would never accept him. Kaelin studied her for a long moment. Then we leave. You and your child away from this place, where the forests are deep and the shadows are yours to command. And I will guide you, even if from afar, until you are ready. Alara hesitated. She wanted to flee, to retreat into the safety of the forest she knew, but there was something in Kaelin's presence that made her feel both terrified and strangely safe. She felt drawn to him, though she did not understand why. Days passed as they traveled together, Kaelin never leaving her side. He taught her how to recognize the subtle signs of the forest, to feel the rhythms of nature, to sense danger before it came. She noticed small things, how the animals never harmed her, how the wind seemed to part for her path, how the shadows moved when she walked. It was as if the forest itself was acknowledging the child she carried. One night they camped beside a frozen lake. The moon reflected on the ice, casting silver light over Kaelin's sharp features. He looked at her differently now, less like an alpha king demanding respect, and more like a man who feared losing something precious. You worry for him, Alara said softly, breaking the silence. Kaelin's eyes, golden and fierce, softened. I do, more than I thought I could, and yet I do not know how to show it. I have always ruled with strength, not tenderness. But you have shown me a path I had forgotten existed. Alara looked away, her fingers brushing her belly. I don't trust easily, she admitted. Not after everything, but I feel safer with you than I have since, she trailed off, unsure of how to finish the sentence. The shame, the rejection, and the pain of her past were too heavy to speak aloud. Kaelin reached out, placing a large, warm hand over hers. I will earn your trust, he promised. I swear it on everything I am, and I swear that your child will know safety and love. Even if the world turns against him, we will not falter. For the first time in weeks, Alara allowed herself to believe it. Perhaps fate had not abandoned her entirely. Perhaps there was hope yet for her and her child. But the wind howled through the forest, carrying a whisper that neither of them could hear clearly. Danger was coming, something ancient and powerful, drawn by the blood of the Alpha Kings. And though Kaelin did not know it yet, the journey to protect Avon, and to understand the strange bond forming between them, would be far more dangerous than either of them could imagine. Alara stared into the firelight, her hand resting on her belly. Avon, she whispered, we will survive, I promise. Kaelin's eyes met hers, glowing in the silver light of the moon. Together, he said. And in that word was a promise, a warning, and a bond that neither of them could escape. In the shadows of the forest, hidden and watching, a figure moved, silent, patient, and deadly. A threat that would not rest until the child was claimed or destroyed. The forest shivered, as if sensing the coming storm. And Alara, clutching her child, felt the first true tremor of fear. The journey had only just begun. The forest was alive with whispers as Alara and Kaelin moved through the thick snow. The trees towered above them like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with frost, bending under the weight of winter's chill. Every step they took crunched in the frozen silence, and yet Alara could feel the forest's strange protection surrounding them. It was as if the land itself knew the child she carried was not ordinary. Alara had grown stronger in the weeks since Kaelin had appeared, guiding her through the forest and teaching her to survive. She could move silently, find food, and read the subtle signs of nature. But despite her growing skill, she still feared the world beyond the trees. Every shadow seemed to hide danger, and every rustle of wind made her heart race. Kaelin walked beside her, ever watchful. His presence was both comforting and unnerving. He moved with the confidence of a ruler, but there was a gentleness in his eyes when they fell on her or the child. Alara noticed it, and it stirred a mixture of fear and longing within her. You are tired, Kaelin said, breaking the quiet as he adjusted the cloak around her shoulders. We should stop soon. Alara shook her head. I cannot. The storm is coming and we must reach the shelter before nightfall. Kaelin glanced at the darkening sky, his golden eyes sharp and calculating. Very well, but if you collapse, I will carry you myself, and I do not like seeing you suffer needlessly. Alara smiled faintly, though her lips were chilled and pale. I am stronger than you think. Kaelin did not respond, but he did not doubt her. That was one thing about him. He never underestimated strength, whether in his enemies or those he cared for. The journey was not easy. The snow grew deeper, and the wind bit through even the thickest cloaks. They moved silently, communicating with gestures and small nods. Kaelin had taught her to read the subtle signs of the forest, the sway of a branch, the tracks in the snow, the behavior of birds. And though it was difficult, Alara was beginning to trust her instincts. By late afternoon, they reached a clearing where the ruins of an old watchtower rose from the snow. The stone walls were cracked and covered in moss, but it offered some protection from the biting wind. Kaelin helped Alara climb the broken steps, careful to support her as she went. "This will be safe for tonight," he said, scanning the tree line for any sign of movement. "The forest will shield us, but only until dawn." Alara nodded, settling against the cold stone. Her hands rested protectively over her belly, and Kaelin crouched beside her, silent and watchful. "Why are you here?" she asked quietly after a long moment. "Why care for a child you did not know existed?" Kaelin's eyes softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through his usual strength. "Because he is mine," he said simply, "and because I have learned that there are things stronger than fear, stronger than pride. Love is one of them." Alara's breath caught. She wanted to pull away, to tell him that words alone were not enough, that she had been abandoned before. But the way he looked at her, so carefully, so sincerely, made it impossible. For the first time in weeks, she felt the warmth of hope. As night fell, the forest seemed to grow still. Stars twinkled faintly through the branches, and the wind's song softened. They shared a simple meal, Kaelin breaking the silence with stories of distant lands, of battles fought, and of the burdens of kingship. Alara listened, fascinated by the depth of the world beyond her village. It was vast, dangerous, and beautiful, a world she had never imagined she would be part of. "I never thought I would leave the forest," Alara said softly. "And yet, here I am walking beside a king." Kaelin's gaze fell on her, and a small, almost imperceptible smile curved his lips. "And yet, here I am, walking beside you. Neither of us expected this, and yet, fate has its own plans." Alara felt a chill, not from the cold, but from the weight of his words. She had begun to sense it herself, that something larger than them was guiding their steps, something that demanded courage, trust, and sacrifice. Suddenly, a rustle in the trees caught their attention. Kaelin rose immediately, his movements swift and silent. His eyes scanned the shadows, and his hand rested on the hilt of his sword. "Stay behind me," he ordered quietly. Alara obeyed, heart pounding. She could feel the tension radiating from him, a force stronger than any danger she had faced in the forest. The rustling grew louder, closer, until a dark figure emerged from the snow. It moved with unnatural speed, and for a moment Alara's breath froze. Kaelin stepped forward, his sword flashing in the dim moonlight. "Who goes there?" he demanded, his voice cold and commanding. The figure paused, then retreated into the shadows, vanishing as suddenly as it had appeared. Kaelin's eyes narrowed, his senses alert. "They are watching us," he said, turning to her. "Someone knows about the child. Someone will come again." Alara's stomach tightened. "Who?" "Why?" Kaelin shook his head. "That I do not know, but Avon's blood is powerful. There are those who would see him taken or destroyed because they fear what he may become." Alara's hands trembled over her belly. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her, heavier than the cold or the snow or the wind. "I will protect him," she whispered. "I will not let anyone hurt him." Kaelin's gaze softened again, but there was steel beneath it. "And I will help you." "But you must trust me, Alara. You cannot do this alone." For the first time, she realized that she did not want to do it alone. She wanted him there not just as a protector, but as an ally, a guide, and something more she could not yet name. The night stretched on, long and quiet, though neither of them slept easily. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting, and somewhere hidden among the shadows, eyes watched them, silent, patient, deadly. When dawn broke, the snow was thick and heavy, covering the ruins in a soft, white blanket. Kaelin helped Alara descend the tower steps, and they continued their journey. The forest seemed more alive now, as if sensing their determination. Birds sang cautiously, and small animals darted through the underbrush without fear. The land itself seemed to acknowledge the child she carried, offering subtle signs of protection and guidance. They reached a narrow path winding along a frozen river. The ice shimmered in the pale sunlight, and the water beneath it moved silently, as if hiding secrets in its depths. Alara noticed small, almost imperceptible ripples, as though the river itself was alive and aware. "You feel it too?" she asked, glancing at Kaelin. He nodded. "Avon is not just a child. His blood is tied to the forest, to the rivers, to the land itself. He is a bridge between worlds, and that is why he is dangerous, and why he is precious. Alara swallowed hard. She had carried the child for months, feeling its life grow inside her, but she had never imagined the true magnitude of its existence. Fear mingled with pride, and she pressed her hands against her belly. "I will keep him safe," she said firmly. "I swear it." Kalen's eyes softened, and he reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I believe you," he said, "and together we will face whatever comes." They walked in silence for a while, the snow crunching beneath their boots. Then, without warning, a figure stepped from the trees ahead. Alara froze, her breath catching. It was a man cloaked in dark robes, his face hidden beneath a hood. He carried no visible weapon, yet Kalen stiffened instantly, his hand on the hilt of his sword. "Who are you?" Kalen demanded, his voice cutting through the cold air. The figure lifted its head slowly, revealing piercing eyes that glowed faintly in the winter light. "I come for the child," the stranger said, voice low and menacing. "The blood of the Alpha King does not belong in the hands of a human woman." Alara's heart pounded. She stepped instinctively in front of her belly, shielding the child she carried. "I am his mother," she said, voice trembling but firm. "You will not take him." Kalen moved beside her, sword drawn, eyes blazing. "Leave now or face me," he commanded. The stranger smiled faintly, a cold, cruel curve of the lips. "We shall see," he said, stepping forward. And with a sudden, fluid motion, he vanished into the forest shadows, leaving only a chill and the sense that danger was closer than ever. Alara's hands shook as she clutched her belly. He knows about Avon," she whispered. Kalen's jaw tightened. "Yes. And this is only the beginning. We must be careful. Every step we take from now on will be watched. Every choice we make will matter." Alara looked at him, fear and determination mingling in her eyes. "Then we face it together," she said. Kalen nodded, his expression unreadable. "Together," he agreed, and for a moment in the cold, snow-covered forest, they were no longer just a king and a woman. They were guardians, bound by a shared purpose and the fragile, powerful life that depended on them. But the forest did not forget. Shadows lingered and eyes waited. The danger that had found them once would return, stronger and closer than before. And Alara knew, deep in her heart, that the path ahead would test every ounce of courage, every measure of trust, and every beat of love that was quietly growing between her and the Alpha King. The journey had only just begun. The forest had grown darker as Alara and Kalen pressed onward. The snow had melted in places, revealing tangled roots and hidden stones that threatened to trip even the most careful traveler. Mist swirled between the trees like spirits in motion, and the wind carried a faint whisper that made the hairs on Alara's arms stand on end. Beside her, Kalen moved with the confidence of a predator, stepping lightly over roots and frozen streams. His eyes constantly scanned the surroundings, alert for any sign of danger. Alara had grown used to following him, trusting his instincts even when the forest seemed alive with unseen threats. "Avon's bloodline is not ordinary," Kalen said quietly as they navigated a narrow path along the cliffside. "It carries an old curse, one that could awaken if the wrong eyes see him. We must reach the relic before it is too late." Alara glanced at him, concern etched on her face. "What kind of curse?" "A curse tied to power," Kalen said. "It seeks to consume or destroy anyone who carries the blood of the Alpha Kings. Many have tried to break it over the centuries, but none have succeeded. That is why we must act carefully and swiftly." Alara shivered, hugging her shawl around her shoulders. "And the relic, it can protect Avon?" Kalen nodded. "Yes, but it is not a simple object. It tests those who seek it. The forest itself judges the worthiness of those who approach." As they climbed higher into the hills, the air grew colder and thinner. The forest seemed quieter now, almost holding its breath. Alara's thoughts wandered to the child growing inside her. Avon's tiny heartbeat pulsed against her hand, steady and strong despite the dangers surrounding them. She whispered promises to him, swearing that she would keep him safe, no matter what lay ahead. They reached a clearing in the center of an ancient grove. The trees here were older, twisted and tall, their branches forming a canopy so thick that only slivers of sunlight broke through. In the center of the grove stood a stone pedestal, worn by time with a faintly glowing crystal resting upon it. The relic. Kalen crouched beside Alara, his eyes scanning for traps. "The forest watches us. If we fail the test, it could turn on us or worse, on Avon." Alara swallowed hard. She felt both awe and fear at the glowing crystal. It radiated power, filling the grove with a soft, humming light. She stepped forward cautiously, her hand hovering over the relic. The ground beneath her trembled slightly. A voice, soft and echoing, filled the air, though no one else was visible. "Only those pure in heart may claim the child's protection," the voice whispered. "Only those who accept their own fears may succeed." Kaelin placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You must face it. I cannot. This trial, it belongs to you as much as it belongs to him." Alara nodded, her chest tight with determination. She took a deep breath and reached out, her fingers brushing the smooth surface of the crystal. Immediately, a rush of visions flooded her mind, flashes of the past, glimpses of Kaelin, her own fears of rejection, and the dangers that threatened her child. She gasped, stumbling back, and Kaelin caught her, holding her steady. "You must not turn away," he said gently. "Face them, Alara, face all of it." She closed her eyes and let the visions wash over her. The fear, the shame, the loneliness, it was all there. And with it came a realization she could not protect Avon by herself. She had to trust someone, and that someone was Kaelin. When she opened her eyes again, the crystal pulsed brighter. The voice whispered once more, "Courage and trust are the keys. Only united shall the child be shielded." Alara looked at Kaelin, and he nodded. Together they placed their hands on the crystal. A warmth spread through them, searing yet comforting. The visions intensified, showing not just their fears but the bond forming between them. The trust, the shared responsibility, and the silent affection that neither had admitted before. The light of the crystal expanded, enveloping them and the grove. A sound like 1,000 whispers filled the air, and the ground beneath them trembled again. When the light faded, the crystal remained, but its glow was gentler now, a soft, protective aura surrounding them. Avon's future for the moment was safe. Alara sank to her knees, exhausted but relieved. Kaelin knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You did it," he said quietly. "You faced it." Alara shook her head. "We did it together." Kaelin's eyes softened, and for the first time he allowed himself a small smile. "Together," he echoed. They rested in the grove, sharing a simple meal from the supplies Kaelin had brought. The forest around them seemed less ominous now, as if acknowledging their victory and the bond they shared. Yet, Alara could feel that this was only the beginning. The test had shown her glimpses of dangers yet to come, shadowy figures, whispers of enemies, and the weight of destiny pressing upon them all. As night fell, the forest grew quiet again, the mist curling between the trees like silent fingers. Alara watched the stars appear through the canopy, feeling the child stir within her. "Avon will know peace," she whispered. "I will make sure of it." Kaelin placed a hand over hers. "And I will stand beside you," he said softly, "no matter what comes." For a moment they sat together in silence, the warmth of shared trust and quiet understanding wrapping around them like a protective cloak. The bond between them had grown stronger through the trial, not just as allies but as something deeper, something neither had fully acknowledged yet. Suddenly, a rustling sound broke the calm. Both of them froze, eyes scanning the darkness. From between the trees, a figure emerged, a woman cloaked in silver and gray, her eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. She moved with fluid grace, almost floating above the ground. "You carry the blood of the Alpha King," she said, voice melodic but chilling. "Do you understand what that means?" Kaelin rose to his full height, stepping protectively in front of Alara. "We understand enough to know you are not welcome here," he said, his voice low and dangerous. The woman smiled faintly. "I am not here to harm you yet. But the child's destiny is far greater than you can imagine. He will be hunted, desired, and feared. Every step you take will be watched." Alara's heart pounded. "Then why tell us this? Why not attack?" "Because the path ahead requires choices," the woman replied. "Choices that will test your hearts, your trust, and your courage. Fail, and the consequences will touch all you love." Kaelin's eyes narrowed. "And if we succeed?" The woman tilted her head, her smile enigmatic. "Then perhaps the child may bring a future the world has long forgotten. But beware, even victory comes with sacrifice." Before they could respond, she turned and vanished into the mist, leaving only the faint sound of her voice lingering in the night. Alara shivered, pressing her hands to her belly. "Kaelin, it's not over. Something is coming, something that will test us in ways we cannot yet see." Kaelin placed a hand on hers, steady and reassuring. "We will face it," he said firmly, "together. Whatever comes, we will protect him, and we will protect each other." The night stretched on, filled with quiet tension. They kept watch, taking turns to rest while the forest remained alert and alive around them. Every shadow, every rustle of leaves reminded them that danger was never far. Yet in that darkness, there was also a growing warmth, the unspoken trust, the shared purpose, and the quiet pull of something deeper forming between them. Alara realized, as she looked at Kaelin under the silver light of the moon, that fear alone could not drive her. Courage and love could guide her, and she would need both to face the trials ahead. Avon's life depended on it, and so did hers. By dawn, the forest seemed calmer, as if acknowledging their vigilance and the strength of their bond. The relic remained at the center of the grove, its protective glow a promise of hope in the days to come. But even as they prepared to leave, the whisper of the silver-cloaked woman lingered in Alara's mind, a reminder that the path ahead would demand everything: courage, trust, and the willingness to face the unknown. Together they stepped forward, the snow crunching beneath their feet, the mist curling around them like a living entity. The journey to protect Avon and to discover the true strength of their bond had only just begun. And somewhere, hidden in the shadows of the forest, the world waited, with its threats, its mysteries, and its tests of heart and courage. The wind howled across the northern cliffs, carrying with it the bitter chill of winter. Alara clutched her cloak tighter around her shoulders, her eyes scanning the distant horizon. The forest behind them was quiet now, but she knew that peace was fragile. Shadows moved in the distance, and the air itself seemed to hum with anticipation. Beside her, Kaelin rode silently on his black stallion, his golden eyes alert and unyielding. He had changed in the weeks since they had found the relic. The weight of responsibility, the dangers they had faced, and the growing bond with Alara had softened some of his icy authority. Yet his presence remained commanding, a force both terrifying and protective. They were approaching the gates of the Northern Kingdom, the place Kaelin ruled with strength and fear. But this time he would not enter as a distant king. This time he entered with a purpose. He carried a child's future in his hands, a responsibility that would test him in ways even his power could not prepare him for. Alara rode beside him, her hand resting gently on her belly. The child moved, and she felt a surge of hope and determination. Avon's life depended on them, on their courage, on the choices they would make in the days ahead. As they neared the gates, the guards paused, eyes widening at the sight of Kaelin with a woman they did not recognize. Whispers spread quickly through the fortress. The Alpha King had returned, accompanied by a mysterious woman. Many feared her, some wondered about her purpose, and a few felt curiosity that bordered on hope. Kaelin dismounted and helped Alara to the ground. "Stay close," he said quietly. "I will speak and you will remain by my side. Let them see not just the Alpha King, but the mother of his heir." Alara nodded, though her heart raced. She had never imagined standing in a throne city, surrounded by the power and politics of a kingdom she barely understood. Yet she felt Kaelin's hand brush hers, a silent reassurance, and it strengthened her courage. They entered the grand hall, where courtiers and nobles had gathered. The air was tense with expectation. Kaelin's parents, once distant and stern rulers, watched silently, their expressions unreadable. "Kaelin," one of the older lords said cautiously, "you bring a woman with you?" "She is not just any woman," Kaelin said, his voice steady and commanding. "She is the mother of my child, heir to the Alpha Kings and the protector of our bloodline." A hush fell over the hall. Alara felt every pair of eyes on her, and for a moment she faltered. But Kaelin's steady gaze met hers, and she drew strength from it. She stepped forward, holding her head high. "My name is Alara," she said, her voice clear despite the tension. "And I am Avon's mother. I have faced the dangers of the forest, the whispers of enemies, and the weight of the world to protect him. I will continue to protect him, no matter the cost." There was silence, then murmurs of astonishment. Some nobles whispered of courage and determination, while others wondered about the audacity of a young woman claiming such authority. Kaelin did not flinch. He had chosen her, trusted her, and believed in her strength. The days that followed were filled with preparation and confrontation. Alara and Kaelin worked together to fortify the kingdom against the hidden threats that lingered in the shadows. The relic's power offered protection, but it was not absolute. They knew that enemies of the bloodline would come, drawn by fear, envy, or desire for power. Alara trained alongside Kaelin, learning to wield confidence, strategy, and courage. Though she had never held a sword, she learned the ways of defense and awareness. Kaelin was patient, teaching without condescension, guiding her as an equal. Through this, their bond deepened, not just as guardians of Avon, but as companions who understood the burdens and sacrifices each carried. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in gold and crimson, Kaelin led Alara to the castle's highest tower. They looked out over the land, the city below, and the forests beyond. "Do you feel it?" Kaelin asked softly. "The weight of what is to come?" Alara nodded, her hand resting on her belly. "I do, but I also feel hope. Avon's life can be different. Our lives can be different." Kaelin turned to her, his golden eyes filled with emotion. "I have lived as a ruler, feared and alone for so long, but with you I have learned that strength is not only power. It is trust, it is love, it is sacrifice, and I will do anything to keep you and him safe." Alara's breath caught. She had come to care for him, more than she had expected, though fear and caution had always lingered. Now she could see the man behind the king, a man capable of love, honor, and protection beyond any throne or crown. Before they could speak further, a commotion erupted in the courtyard. A shadow moved swiftly through the gates, and Alara knew immediately that the threat they had sensed all along had arrived. Kaelin drew his sword, and the guards moved to intercept the intruder. A figure cloaked in darkness stepped into the light. Its eyes glowed faintly, and a chilling aura radiated from it. Kaelin's jaw tightened. "So it begins," he muttered. Alara clutched her belly, feeling Avon stir as if sensing the danger. She stood beside Kaelin, determined to face whatever came. "We will protect him," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. The battle that followed was swift and tense. Kaelin moved with unparalleled skill, defending the city gates and ensuring no harm reached Alara or the child. Alara followed his instructions carefully, using her newfound awareness to anticipate threats and shield her son. The attackers were skilled, but the Alpha King and the mother of his heir were stronger, united in purpose and trust. When the dust settled, the enemy had retreated, leaving only the cold wind and the echoes of the clash. Kaelin lowered his sword, his chest heaving, and turned to Alara. "You fought well," he said, "stronger than I could have imagined." Alara's lips curved into a tired smile. "We fought well together." Kaelin reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his eyes soft with admiration and something deeper. "I could not have done this without you," he said quietly. For the first time, Alara allowed herself to lean into him, to feel the bond they had formed through trials, fear, and shared purpose. Their hands met, and the warmth between them was more powerful than any magic or relic. In the days that followed, Kaelin addressed the court, acknowledging Alara not just as the mother of his child, but as a partner and equal in the protection of the kingdom. Slowly, the nobles began to accept her, impressed by her courage and wisdom. Her parents, who had once rejected her, arrived at the gates, humbled and remorseful. Alara faced them with quiet strength, forgiving them not out of weakness, but out of the realization that her life and Avon's future were bigger than old grievances. Together, Kaelin and Alara rebuilt trust, not just within themselves, but in the world around them. They fortified the kingdom, nurtured Avon's growth, and discovered that love and courage could coexist with power. One evening, as the first spring blooms began to emerge from the snow, Alara stood on the castle balcony, Kaelin at her side. Avon kicked gently from within her womb, and she smiled, pressing her hand over her belly. "He is strong," Kaelin said softly, his golden eyes watching the horizon, "and he will grow to be greater than either of us could imagine." Alara looked at him, her heart swelling with a mixture of love and gratitude. "We will guide him," she said, "together." Kaelin's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. "Together," he echoed, the word carrying a promise, a warning, and a bond that neither could break. But even in this moment of peace, the kingdom was not entirely free of shadows. Far beyond the mountains, in lands they had yet to see, hidden eyes observed them, waiting for the right moment. Fate had not finished its tests, and destiny still held secrets that would one day call Avon, and perhaps his parents, to face challenges they could not yet imagine. Alara and Kaelin, however, stood strong. They had faced exile, danger, and curses. They had learned trust, courage, and love. And they knew that whatever came next, they would meet it together, as guardians, as partners, and as a family united by blood, sacrifice, and heart. The wind swept across the balcony, carrying the scent of the first flowers of spring. Alara breathed it in, feeling the world awaken around her. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling Avon stir once more. Soon, she whispered, you will see the world. And it will know love, courage, and hope. Kaelin's hand rested over hers, and for the first time in his life, he allowed himself to believe not only in his power, but in the future they could create together. The kingdom was safe for now. Shadows would always linger, and the trials of fate would never truly end. But Alara, Kaelin, and Avon had each other, and that was a strength no curse, enemy, or shadow could overcome. The sun rose over the northern kingdom, painting the snow in gold and silver. Together they watched the dawn, ready to face whatever the world would bring next.